So let me ask you this. How much of the code that protects your money do you think should be written by an AI? Well, one of the biggest names in crypto just put a number on it, and the internet absolutely lost its mind. We're going to break down what happens when a super futuristic tech goal crashes head-on with a very, very painful public memory.
Okay, so it all kicked off with this one post from Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong. And look, on the surface, it sounds pretty bold, right? Kind of forward-thinking. Let's ramp up our AI code generation from 40% to over 50% in like a month. But context is everything here, and what he probably thought was a cool statement about innovation, a lot of people saw as something else entirely, like a confession.
And yeah, saying the internet was not impressed is putting it mildly. The announcement wasn't met with a round of applause for being so tech-savvy. Nope, it got hit with this immediate, massive wave of ridicule, criticism, and honestly, just outright alarm. From customers, developers, security experts, you name it.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Why? Why did this goal, which sounds so futuristic, trigger such a huge backlash? Well, the answer boils down to one perfect piece of internet slang that just captured everyone's fear: vibe coding.
And this post from a user on X, man, it just cuts right to the heart of it. It immediately connects Armstrong's big announcement to something that was still a really painful memory for Coinbase customers: a massive data leak. The implication is crystal clear. Hey, you guys couldn't even protect our data before, and now you're bragging that a machine is writing the code that's supposed to secure it?
And the response from the actual security pros? Just as fast, and maybe even more damning because it was so short. I mean, when a super respected security expert like Samsung just replies with 3 words, "This explains a lot," that carries some serious weight. It's basically saying, yeah, to us in the know, this kind of explains some of the problems we've seen.
And that really gets to the heart of the problem, you know? Coinbase isn't some social media app where if it breaks, no big deal. It's a financial institution. They're holding billions of dollars in assets. The founder of another exchange called this whole thing a giant red flag, and that really sums it up. When it comes to your money, the top priority has to be rock-solid security, not hitting some random AI generation goal.
Okay, so let's actually define this term vibe coding, because it's key. It's basically slang for writing code based on a gut feeling, a vibe, instead of on careful, tested, secure engineering. So by slapping this label on Coinbase's AI plan, critics were basically saying the company was choosing speed and automation over the safety and reliability you absolutely need when you're handling people's money.
Right, so this huge backlash, it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. To really get why people were so upset, you have to look at this pretty devastating security breach that was still really fresh in everyone's memory. And the scale of this thing, it was just staggering.
So, just last year, a data breach at Coinbase exposed the super-sensitive Know Your Customer data of almost 70,000 users. And we're not just talking names and emails here. KYC data is the serious stuff. Addresses, birthdays, even official ID numbers. It's a complete goldmine for scammers. This wasn't some tiny mistake. This was a massive failure to protect their own customers.
And this had very real, very painful consequences. In just one case we know about, a single scammer reportedly used that leaked info to drain an account of $4 million. That one number just shows you this isn't some theoretical risk. This is the real-world, life-changing danger that happens when a company that holds your money has a security slip-up.
And that is why the reaction to the CEO's tweet was so visceral, so immediate. You had users on X literally asking if the code that was supposed to protect their personal info was vibe-coded too. That one comment just perfectly sums up the public's distrust. They're connecting that past failure, point blank, to this new, what they see as a reckless policy.
But okay, let's move beyond just the data leak for a second. Software engineers and other experts pointed out another huge, fundamental problem with Armstrong's goal. They started questioning the whole idea of measuring success by the sheer amount of code you can generate, especially with an AI.
And right here, you see this total clash of philosophies. Coinbase sets this goal to generate more code with AI. But, as one engineer pointed out, good software development is often about the exact opposite. It's about writing less code. The real markers of success are things like quality, security, and how easy it is to maintain down the road. It's not about how many lines of code you can churn out.
And the criticism didn't stop there either.
experts started talking about the nightmare of having to debug a total mess of AI-generated code. They called that 50% target a bizarrely arbitrary number that developers could easily cheat just to hit their metrics. And then the customers chimed in, asking, hey, are any of these so-called efficiencies going to lead to lower fees for us, or maybe better customer support, which, a lot of people feel is seriously lacking.
Okay, so obviously with this firestorm raging, Coinbase wasn't just going to stay quiet. They put out a blog post to try and clarify what was going on and defend their use of AI. And their whole argument really hinges on one key difference in wording.
So this is the crucial distinction they tried to make. They're saying, look, we're not using AI-generated code where a machine just writes stuff and pushes it out on its own. Instead, they want to frame it as AI-augmented. The idea is that AI is just a powerful tool, like a fancy autocomplete, that helps their human developers work faster. But those humans still have to review and approve everything.
And this was really the core of their whole defense. In their official blog post, they said it straight up. Tools don't ship bugs, humans do. See what they're doing? They're putting all the final responsibility squarely on their engineers' shoulders, arguing that the AI is just a tool to help them be more productive, but the human is the final gatekeeper for quality.
And this is a huge but, here's the catch. In that exact same blog post where they were defending themselves, Coinbase made a pretty shocking admission. They actually acknowledged that, from their own experience, a growing use of AI in development increases bugs. So at the same time they're defending the practice, they're basically confirming the #1 fear that was driving all the public outrage in the first place.
And that really brings us to the central conflict of this whole story, doesn't it? On one hand, is Coinbase's big push for AI-generated code a bold, innovative step that's going to make them more efficient? Or, on the other hand, is it a totally reckless gamble with customer security where they're chasing random metrics instead of doing the careful, detailed work required to protect people's money?
So, at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway here? This really isn't just about Coinbase. It's about a massive question that we're all going to have to face as AI gets woven into every single part of our lives, especially our finances. It really comes down to this. When it's your money on the line, where do you draw that line between innovation and just plain recklessness?